Sam Wilson was born on the 13th of September, 1766. Born to Edward and Lucy Wilson, who live in what is now Arlington, Massachusetts, he was one of 13 children. In the year 1780, the Wilson family moved to Mason, New Hampshire. Sam's older brothers enlisted in the army, leaving Sam as his father's right-hand man on the farm.
By 1793, Sam and his brother had entered into a meatpacking business near River Street in Troy. By 1797, Sam returned to Mason, New Hampshire to marry Betsy Mann. They returned to Troy where they had 4 children. Sam Wilson, affectionately known as Uncle Sam, ran a meat factory with his brother Ebenezer in Troy. During the War of 1812, he gained a contract with the government to supply meat to soldiers at the Watervliet Arsenal and the Greenbush military camp. It was during the War of 1812 that the Uncle Sam legend was born. At this time, the initials U.S. were not commonly recognized as the initials for the United States, as the title United States had just been adopted by the government. When someone inquired about the meaning of the large U.S. stamped on all of the barrels of meat, the reply was, "Uncle Sam, of course. 'Tis he that's feeding the whole army." This interpretation was picked up promptly by other soldiers, who began to call everything belonging to the government Uncle Sam's. The term as applied to the United States quickly sprang into popular favor, and the weekly periodicals soon began to sketch caricature likeness by adding the long white beard and high hat, a typical representation of our government. Uncle Sam never took his fame too seriously. He stayed active in the community in Troy, New York, until the day he died, July 31st, 1854. His wife Betsy survived him by a few years until 1863. Sam was buried in Mount Ida Cemetery until his son Benjamin had him moved to Oakwood Cemetery. Oakwood Cemetery is located on Oakwood Avenue in Troy, New York. And so I embarked on my adventure to find Uncle Sam's grave. And here we are at Uncle Sam Wilson's grave. And over here, we see Betsy Mann's grave, his wife. Sam's grave has a bronze plaque and is made of granite. It is rather prominent. For being a cemetery, Oakwood is not an unpleasant place to be. The weather was beautiful, so it was a rather pleasant experience for being a cemetery. Sam and Betsy had 4 children: Polly, Sam Jr., Benjamin, and Albert. I learned while at the cemetery, 2 of Sam and Betsy's children, Polly and Sam Jr., died tragically at very young ages. Sam's other 2 children, Benjamin and Albert, lived relatively long lives. Benjamin practiced law in Troy in New York City until he died in 1859. Albert was a silversmith and banjo maker. He died in 1866, making him the last of Sam Wilson's immediate family. Overall, I would recommend visiting Uncle Sam's grave at Oakwood Cemetery. It's a nice experience if you're interested in local as well as national history. Perhaps here Uncle Sam is saying, I want you to remember me.